study the book. Okay. Welcome everyone to our, oops, I'm going to start again because this is Higayon, and we've got to switch here. Okay, let me just get set up.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our discussion of Darkei Gemara. This Siman, Siman Hay, is a very powerful exposition of how the learning process takes place. And it's something that really, really has to be studied because it's the essential way that we learn dinim. So he says that, just to give us a little brief overview, that when we create or when we understand dinim in the Torah, we understand what Hashem wants us to do. So it only comes from two sources, he says. One is what's written in the Chumash, okay, in black and white, whether it's clearly there or whether it's a remez. And the other thing is that we extend the words that are written there by logic, okay, in which he calls a svara, okay. So that's two basic ways that we understand what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do in any law. It either is written there or we're going to expand what's written there through a svara. So now he explains that when something is written, it must be that you couldn't have understood it from a svara. That was a very big chiddush. Because if not so, then it's obvious. So that's his first basic rule, that what you want to understand is that whenever the Torah writes something, it should be because you would have thought the opposite. Okay? So if it says you have to pay for Nezikin, so you would think maybe you don't have to pay for Nezikin. Okay? So that's the basic starting point. Now, it can be that the Torah will repeat what you held in Svara Chitzona, he says, if there's two possibilities. So since you would have a doubt if it's A or B, so the Torah has to say A, even though that was one of your possibilities. And that's really what's happening with the Arba Abbas Nezikin. We really, in one hand, we could have used any one of the Nezikin to learn all of them, because they all have the common quality that they're dark and lahazik, shmiras and alecha. But since they have unique qualities, you may have made a mistake and said that no, you have to. This is the specific nezik that you pay for, and anything that's not exactly like it doesn't have common lahazik, for instance. So then you wouldn't have to pay. So because the doubt arises, you'd have two svaras. Maybe you should only pay for the most dangerous items, like the Karen, or no, maybe you should pay for the base lower common denominator called dark and lahazik. So Hashem has to repeat what you would have thought by another pasuk. Okay. Now, if the Svara Chitzona is mukhrach, there's not a suffix about it, and then the Torah repeats it, he says, so now it comes to Mamayit, and you can never use that rule anywhere else. So if you have Shavik Kesem learned in one din of Nezikin, and then it's learned in Ivri, for instance, so then you're stuck because you're going to have now Mefarish any other place that you can use Shavik Kesem, unless you could show that there was ambivalence, which is the Tosfos there. Okay, Beseda. So that's his basic rules. Okay, and here I said, really, if it says X, you would have thought not X is a Svara Chitzona, or if it says X, you would have had a suffix if the Svara Chitzona was X and not X, or if the Davadai was X in Svara Chitzona and it repeats X, so then it comes to say only here and nowhere else. That's his first very important yisod. of how to learn. The second yesod, he says, is how do you know when to say that a rule mentioned in any pasuk is general or particular? Okay, the two rules of mi de gali hacha gali de kolak Torah kula or no mi de gali hacha de gali gali and nowhere else. How do you know if it's expansive or not? Okay, so he explains that if the Torah is machadesh in a place where the miyut chiddush, which is the place where you would have most obviously thought, for instance, if it says a kohen has a certain isur, so then you don't extend it down the chain. But if it puts it in the greater chiddush, you say even a Yisrael has an isur, so then you go up the chain and you say that, of course it goes to anything greater than it. So that's the basic rule of where the Torah was mechadesh. Was it mechadesh in the smaller chiddush or the larger chiddush? If it's in the smaller chiddush, so then you can't extend down. But if it's in the larger chiddush, you can extend up. Okay. That was his explanation of how pasukim work. Okay, they say the opposite of Svarah Chitzona. They remove a suffix and etc. We just learned. But now, the second way we're going to learn is through Svara, through logic, let's say, through using our heads, because now the words are finished, and now we have to come in and take those words and extend them logically. So he says the way that's done is, number one, through comparison. Okay, he says when two things are similar, two mishnahs are similar, two cases are similar. So if the given one is in the Chumash, so we know anything that's doma to that will have the same din. That's the whole idea of Avos Mikval V'Ika told us that if the Karen is written, which means Kavan Lahazik, so that anything that has Kavan Lahazik, anything that's doma to Karen, let's say he kicks or he squats or he bangs with his body some other animal, so that also is going to have the same din. So that's a svara that two cases which are domin comparable to each other. If one is given in the Chumash, so then we're allowed to extend it to other cases. Okay, that's called Shnei Nesuim Shavim or Shnei Chomorim Okalim. Of course, the variation on that's the Mamatzinu. The variation is the Kal V'Chomer, and we can go up or down the chain depending if we're going from Chomer to Kal V'Chomer. Okay. Now, the third one, he says, is interesting. It's called a hekesh. It's a little bit, it means that the two concepts are put together by their relationship in a pasuk. Okay, like when we're makash shabayali yitzia. That means logically they don't go together, but sometimes the Torah will put two items together to make a bridge and a link. So we can learn that a woman gets married with shtar from the concept that was written in the Torah in divorce that says v'yotzava haisali shacher. She goes out and goes into another man by talking about the marriage context in terms of divorce context. So the concept of divorce with shtar gets moved to the concept of marriage with shtar, even though there's no logical reason why those two things together, but the hekesh, or the link, was done through a sequence of the Pesukim. Okay. Now, it says the difference, of course, if it's a hekesh, is always stronger. Of course, Mamatzinos and Kal V'Chomer, since we're built on logic, can be broken with logic. But something that's a Gezer Sekasa, because it's a sequence of Pesukim, is stronger. Okay. Okay. I'm just giving a review here because it's such an important little piece here. Okay, now he says we really shouldn't have repetition, but sometimes we do have lo zu afzu zu vein tzrich lo marzu. sometimes we will have in a Mishnah a greater and a smaller Chiddush. Now we're up to here. He says the following. He says, La'olam kol nosei halo mitchavaro al yafusa lo yelbo ela maila milamdo v'lo yoter. When you're using a svara to generate a tolda, so then the tolda that you generate should not be greater than the source. Why? Because kien roi l'tam yoter chamor or gadol mivabo, because the Talmud shouldn't be greater than the rabbi. Okay, how would you say that a source is going to produce something greater than what it is? And that's our rule called Dayo. Dayo means that you can't generate through a comparison or through a Kal Vachomer, even you can't generate anything greater than what you started out with. So there we brought the Mishnah in Baba Kama that said that the Shur Hamazik B'Shus HaNizak. What's the din of the Shur Hamazik B'Shus HaNizak? So we have the Torah's Meforish that in Rishus HaRabim you pay Chetzi Nezik for a tam. What about if the tam goes into Rishus HaNizak? What's the din? It's not written. So we have to derive that din through a svara, through logic. So the Mishnah says the following. Shor Hamazik Rishus HaNizak Ketzad Nagach, Nagaf, Nashach, or Batzba'et, if it does any of these activities, goring or pushing with the body or biting or squatting or kicking, so then B'Rishus HaRabim Mishalem Chetzi Nezek. Since it's Karen, and it's told us, so of course in Rishus HaRabim we know that a tam pays Chetzi Nezek. Question is, what about in Rishus HaNizak? So Rabbi Tarfon learns that you pay Nezek Shalom Rishus HaNizak. And the Chachamim say, no, you pay the same Chetzi Nezek. And they're going to do it logically through the following Kal V'chomer. Rabbi Tarfon says, Uma b'makom shakel ala shein v'ala regel b'rishus harabim shehu patur yichma leihem b'rishus hanizak l'shalom nezek shalom makom shehichmer ala karen b'rishus harabim l'shalom chetzi nezek eino din shenachmer la b'rishus hanizak l'shalom nezek shalom. So he has the following Kal V'chomer. He says, let's look at it. Let's analyze it. Shein and Regel are more Makel than Karen and Rishus HaRabim. Okay, why? Because Shein and Regel are Patur in Rishus HaRabim, and Karen pays Chetzi Nezek. Now, when it came to Rishus HaNizak, the Torah not only said that Shein and Regel pays Chetzi Nezek, says Nezek Shalom. It was Hichmer Aleim Rishus HaNizak l'shalom Nezek Shalom. So you see, it went from 0 in Rishus HaRabim to a full in Rishus HaNizak. So he says, in the place that's machmer on the Karen, which is Rishus HaRabim to pay Chetzi Nezek, we see it's more machmer than Shein in Rishus HaRabim. So Eino Din Shenachmer La B'Rishus HaNizak L'Shalom Nezek Shalom. So shouldn't it, if it already starts off more machmer in Rishus HaRabim to pay Chetzi Nezek, so shouldn't it pay Nezek Shalom in Rishus HaNizak, where Shein and Regel Chayav Nezek Shalom? So the Chachamim say to him, "Dai labo min hadin liyos kanidon, ma b'rishus rabim chetzi nezek b'rishus hanizek chetzi nezek." So they say no. They say, look, you can't derive the din of Rishus HaNizak from Rishus HaRabim and end up with a greater result than what you're coming from. Okay, so this is something we discussed last week. We'll have to get into it much more deeply, but basically that's the rule, that if you're deriving a din here in the case of Chisa Nizak, since the essential din of Karen is Chesi Nezek, you can't produce a greater din in the result, okay, even though you often would like to, because it's a comparison, because it seems the Rishus is more, is greater when you look at it in the relationship of Regel and Karen. But he says, look, the Chum keep telling him, look, essentially you're telling me that you want to derive the din of Karen from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaNizak, and you're going to end up with a greater result. You can't do that because the result can never be greater. Here we have another variation of a logical move, which is similar, but it's not. It's a little different. Omnam im acher shelimed hadin mimalamdo v'natek etzlo im besnifei osan hadin yeh b'mailat rabo b'derech usignon shelo v'lo yoter. That's a machlokus. O yeh b'derech usignon sheyesh l'talmid b'shar dinim shebo meforeshes bo b'torah b'zeh yesh machlokus chachamim. In other words, if I do derive a din, we'll look at a case, from a source, but in my din, in my derivative din, in other aspects, I'm usually more machmir. So the question of whether when you import the law into the derivative case, whether it can be affected by the derivative's general machmir condition. We'll give an example too. Okay. So yesh mehem ki me'acher shezeh hadin lamdu me'acher v'lo bo meforish bo b'din atzmo b'snifa b'signo b'kol echad omrim dayo. So some people say, look, even though the derivative case has some very important chumras, since this law was imported from this classic case, it can never be greater than the din it came from. And other people say, no, it's not true. You can import a law into a derivative case, and it can be affected by the environment that it came into. They said, since the imported din comes into a environment which is generally more machmir, so that machmir dinim can affect the imported din. And it can be affected by the meforish dinim in the nilmad, in the derivative case. That's called don minei v'uki basrei. The one who says no, when you import a din from another case, it can never be greater, even though the derivative case may have certain chumras. That's don minei uminei. You take it exactly as it was. And the other opinion says don minei uki basrei. Says no, you can import the din and it can have chumras. Okay, and here's this example. But this would pair of shvuas ha'edus, b'techilas nida, nofel machlokas ben chacham Reb Shimon, gali nikva, v'omar shnehem lo lamdu ela misota v'du v'tishkach. Okay, so let's look over here in this case. U'masha omru don minei v'uka basrei, dafka l'chumra v'alo l'kula. Okay, he says whenever you do allow the derivative case to affect the imported din, so you always have to, it always has to be more machmir than the master case or the classical case. You can never say because there's certain kulas in the derivative case, we're going to now let the imported din be mako. So here's a case of Reb Papa says, Menayin l'ravas nogea b'shichlot zera, Talmud loma o ish. Okay, a person that touches shichlot zera, he becomes metame. Uplige tanai ba'alma. And there's a big machlokus about exactly how the din gets imported into shichlot zera. The Iker, the Amre, Don Mine Mine, this is just the Gemara, I'm just saying it over. Certain people say Don Mine Mine, when this din comes in to Shechvat Zera, it's going to have exactly the same din as its classical case. And as far as the Mida, we're going to learn in 1 second. And other people say no, it'll have chumras that exist in the case. So, Lamando Madon Mine, he learns the following. Ma sheretz benegia, just like a sheretz, when you touch it, it's metame. Av shechvat zera benegia. So too, shechvat zera has the din that if someone touches it, he's metame. Umine, ma sheretz kadasha, but how much of the sheretz has to be there in order to transmit the tumah? Kadasha, the size of a lentil bean. So too, we're going to say av shechvat zera b'kadasha. Also, the shechvat zera has to be the size of a lentil in order to transmit the tumah. What about the other person who says laman doma don minei ba'ukibasrei? So he learns the concept of tumah, of shechvat zera from sheretz again. Ma sheretz benegia, av shechvat zera benegia. Yes, he says it's true. We'll have to learn the idea of tameh from sheretz. But he says v'ukme ba'asra. But we're going to let the kamos, the amount, be affected by the nilmat. Ma shechvat zera l'roa b'mashu, av l'nogea b'mashu. So shechvat zera has a general shear of a mashu, very tiny amount. So he says also the negia is not kadasha, like the case of shechvat zera, but it's going to be a mashu. It's going to have the same chumrah that we find normally in the case of shechvat zera. Okay, so though that's a question when you import information, is it completely imported, don minei u'minei, or can the chumras that exist in the nilmat affect the din, as we've just seen here? Okay, now this piece.
So this is what kind of? This is not a kal v'chayim, right? Yeah, I'm still here. So this is not a kal v'chayim, right?
No, not at all.
This is just a like
it's a mamatzino.
Mamatzino, right? Because he's saying that whatever you found,
it's either mamatzino or hekesh. I really don't know. It's either a mamatzino or a hekesh. I don't know which one it is. But the point is whether the information that came through this mamatzino, it can be affected by the target. You have the source and the target. Right. Some people say whatever the source is, so that's what the target has to be. Other people say no. When you get to the target, if the target has a chumrah, so the din can end up being machmer also. So it's true it's matama, but it's matama like the other sniffim in shechvat zera, which is a mashu. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say that. Now this piece here, I will admit to you that I know what the end means, and I'll give you an example, but I don't understand what he wants here. Okay. So if you can figure it out,
I'll try to help.
Please. La'olam kishahayu hanosim mi chomer asher hamishpatim asher yinasu aleihem hem chiyuv shlili o isa v'heter tameh v'tahara o kiyosebo. Whenever you're dealing with subject matter, he says, whose chomer is chomer tzura, whose material intellectually, of course, are chayiv, in other words, yes and no, isa heter, which means that they're direct opposites. Okay, they're diametric opposites. Okay, so whenever you have that type of situation, o perishayu no se echad u'mishpatim asher yinosu alav yesh machlokes l'tanayim or morim, or you have a certain topic which is a debate between Amoraim. So lo tochel lahakshus v'lo melisnei chada. You can never say, let's learn one of these two cases. Okay, remember, lisnei chada means that the one case can be derived from the next. So why do I have to learn both of them, right? Like our classic case in Nezikin. Well, we're really using that Mishnah a lot, aren't we? If I could learn the Mava from the shore from the Mashaba, so then the Kasha is L'snei Chada. Why don't we just learn one of the Chumash? Why do we need two cases? Okay, so he says, when it comes to diametric opposites or a machlokis, so you can never ask this kasha. Rotz Lamar, Shiomer hayoter kal me'oso hanosim o me'oso hamishpatim umimenu nilmad hayoser chamor. So never, you can't ask in this situation that we should. Let's just write the more makel of the situation, and I can now generate what the more machmir situation would be. Ki im hanoseh rishon kal etzel achiyav, because if the first subject that was spoken about is kal etzel achiyav, let's say it's talking about a Yisrael, then hine chavaro chomer ken. So then the Kohen is more machmir. V'emhu chomer etzel achiyav, and if he's more machmir when it comes to the chiyuv, let's say the Kohen, so hine chavaro, the Yisrael should be lighter than him, or the opposite. O imhu kal etzel hachiyav, hine hu chomer etzel hashlili. If he is, there's more reason to say that he should be chayiv, so there's more reason to say that he should not have this quality. O chabaro chomer etzel hachiyav. Now, I don't know what that means. If you can figure it out, I just said it. I read it. I translated the words, but I don't get it. He's trying to explain something here, which I don't get. Okay, so you want to take a minute and think about it. You can even take more than 1 minute, but he's trying to say you have to write when you have two cases which are diametric opposites. You have to write them both. But I don't understand exactly the example he doesn't give, and I don't know exactly what he wants to say there. So it's up to you.
Yeah, that's what it seems like he's saying, but it doesn't seem logical. So how would you know that somebody else would say the opposite? I mean, for example, from number 4, yesh machlokes l'tanayim me'amoraim, I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to go to the end, which I do understand, and I gave an example of it, and maybe you'll get caught. Okay, but I admit I've done this a few times, and I don't get it. U'kamochen kasher hanosei echad u'mishpatav rabim. Let's say you have one subject, and you have many laws associated to that one subject. Okay, fine. V'yesh machlokes behem. And now you have a machlokus about all those different laws. Hine hadin shehu kal etzel hacholek etzel chavaro. One guy's chumrah will be the other guy's kula. V'achomer le'echad kal lechavaro. Ulechein lo tochel asosa mehem rotze lomar Minosum ke'elu diuk klal mina echad lechavro. So then you can't make any diuk from one case to the next. V'chein nami b'mishpatim elu ke'elu, and you can't make any inference from one law to the next. Rotz l'mashi yesh machlokas, because there's a machlokas. V'al zeh bo b'talmud lohodia koch the reploni. And this is when the Talmud always says it came to tell you the koch for reploni. Okay, so I'm going to give you a case that I worked on, and I can see what the problems are, but how to fit it into that language above, I don't know. Okay, so let's get the case here. I have a case like this. We have a Mishnah in Brachas. Everybody's learned. It says, Hakor Shema v'lo hishmiya lahozno. The case is that a person reads Shema Yisrael, but he doesn't hear the words he's reading. So the Tana Kama says Yotze. It's okay, he's Yotze, no problem. You don't have to hear the words. And the Gemara is going to explain, because he holds that Shema means you have to understand what you're saying. In other words, in any language that you can understand it, but it doesn't mean physical hearing. But Rabbi Yosef Omer lo Yotze. Rabbi Yosef agrees that you have to understand what you're saying, of course, but he holds that Shema is Peshuto also. You have to hear what you say. Okay? So the question is, they bring a case of truma. Can a person who can't hear separate truma? He can't say the bracha because he can't hear the bracha. So they want to know. So the brisa there says that he can take truma. If he takes truma, he's yotzi b'diavad. Okay, because the bracha is not miyakev. He doesn't have to hear what he's saying. It's not miyakev. So truma if he takes it. So they want to know who holds this position that the person who is deaf can take truma, and they say rather remarkably it's Rabbi Yosef. Why? Because when it came in this Mishnah into Kriyat Shema, so there he says, b'diavad you're not Yotzi, and lechatchila you're not Yotzi either, because that's the Raisa. But Truma, to say the bracha is only midrabanan. You just have to do the Maisa and have the Kavanah, but the actual bracha is midrabanan. So there he would say, you are Yotzi. It's only because Kriyat Shema is the Raisa, he says b'diavad you're not Yotzi, but with taking Truma you would be Yotzi. That's what the Gemara says. So now the Gemara has a kasha and says, Umimai de Rev Yosihi, Dilma Rev Yehudahi. Okay. Tosfos explains that the Tana Kama in Kriyat Shema is really Rev Yehuda. Okay. So Rev Yehuda, who holds that you don't have to hear the words B'chlal, he says that you're Yotzi. So why didn't you say that that's the same person who said that you're Yotzi in Truma? After all, Truma is midrabanan, and it says that the deaf person is Yotzi. And here, Kriyat Shema is midrabanan, and he says that you're Yotzi. So why didn't you say it's the Tanakam or Rebbe Yehudi here in Kriyat Shema? Looks like b'diavad you're Yotzi, and l'chatchila you shouldn't do it. That's what they want to say. Now they want to bring a raya that it has to be that this case of Truma really is Rebbe Yehuda. Because in Kriyat Shema he said, b'diavad in lichatchila lo. How do I know that in Kriyat Shema the din is b'diavad? It's okay, lichatchila, not teda. I'll bring you a proof. The Katane Hakora. We learned this deal from us. Why did our Mishnah say Hakora et hashma v'lo hashmiya le'ozno. Why did it talk about the din b'di'evet? The Tanakhama says it's only b'di'evet that you yotzi, but lechatchila you're not yotzi. What's the logic? Because if lechatchila you would be yotzi, so let him argue with Reb Yossi lechatchila. Why are they arguing b'di'evet? That's the riot. Let's go through that again. Okay? So we spoke a lot and a little bit complicated. Let's try to focus and try to get what's going on here. The Tanakhama says, "Akora tishma v'lo shmilos." No, the din is yotzi. So that's talking about a din b'di'evet, correct? So the question is, we have to now fill in logically what the Tanakhama would hold l'chatchila.
Right.
Okay? So the Gemara says it must mean that he holds l'chatchila it's no good. I can prove that to you logically.
Because he used the lashon of kare, which is b'di'evet.
Right.
But l'chatchila, you would say you're not yotze. Only b'di'evet you yotze for slash milah, isn't it?
Right. Right. And he's arguing with Red Yossi only in b'di'evet. Right?
Right.
Because Red Yossi would say even b'di'evet you're not Yossi. Right?
Right.
But they would both agree that l'chatchila you're not supposed to do it. Maybe the Chachamim would say it's even midrabanan l'chatchila you're not supposed to do it, and Rebbe Yossi says midrabanan you're not supposed to do it. But they're only the fact that they brought down the din b'di'evet means that that's the only place they have their machlokas. Right? Because if they had their machlokas l'chatchila, then they should have said koran et hashma v'lo hashmiya le'ozno. You should read Shema and you don't have to hear it. And you're Yotzi. That's what the Tanakhama should have said. And Reb Yossi says, no way, you're not Yotzi doing that. They should have argued l'chatchila. Why are they arguing b'di'evet? It must mean that they agree l'chatchila. That's the diuk. Okay, that's the proof. Okay? So the Gemara wants to push that away and says, no, you have no proof at all. No proof. It could really be that Reb Yossi, the Tanakhama and Reb Yossi are arguing l'chatchila too. Right?
Right.
So we said, wait a minute, if they're arguing l'chatchila, let the Mishnah talk l'chatchila. Why is it talking b'di'evet? Right? Mm-hmm. So it answers l'hodia, the koach of Reb Yehuda, that he holds
that even b'di'evet you're not yotze.
Even b'di'evet you're not yotze.
Right.
If they only talk l'chatchila, what would you say of Reb Yossi? That they're arguing. He would say also, l'chatchila you're not yotze, but b'di'evet you are. That's what you would have thought. Right? So to show you how far Reb Yossi goes, they talked about b'di'evet. Okay? That is where they use this principle. So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say that you can't medayek from the b'di'evet case to the l'chatchila case. It's not mukhrach. Right?
Right.
You wanted to medayek by the fact that they talk b'di'evet must mean that they agree l'chatchila. Right? But that's not mukhrach. It could be that they disagree with l'chatchila, and they only spoke b'di'evet because they wanted to show you how far your Reb Yossi would go that even b'di'evet is not good. Okay. Now that's supposed to be an explanation of his principle. Okay. In other words, when two people argue, yotzi lo yotze, that's a shlile and a kiyum, right? One, the Tanakhama says yotze, and Reb Yossi says lo yotze. That's called kiyum and shlili. Yes and no.
Right.
So he says, once you have yes and no, so you can't medayek anymore what their positions are. You know what their positions are b'di'evet, but with l'chatchila, you're not sure. So that's what I see in this piece. in the explanation. Now, as far as putting that in his words, it's not so easy.
Yeah, especially since he has 4 choices. He has 4 different subcategories.
Right. And this is only so I leave it to you. Okay, it's a piece that's hanging. I didn't have. I asked a few people, but you have to be very much involved in these type of things to appreciate what he's saying. And we'll leave it up in the air like it is. Okay. But that's what it is. He's talking about, again, a logical, what's called logically mukhrach. So we see that there's the language is an indication of what should be, but it's not absolutely mukhrach. There's ways to push it off. More than that, I can't do. Okay, let's go to Siman Vav. So that's an important siman, a very important siman about learning from Pesukim, learning from Svara. How does the pasuk work in relationship to svara chitzona, and how do svaras work, both pure svaras like the Mamitzim and the Kal Vachomer and the Hekesh, and this last little piece of, and how to extend from one din to a whole group of cases with the Miyut Kiddush, and how to say it's limited if it's, the Miyut Kiddush is not going to extend, and the greater Kiddush will extend. And here he's trying to explain what's called Hecher Chanad and logic. Okay? Siman Vav. Okay. Now he's going to explain when people argue, what's the foundation of their arguments? What do they argue about? So he says like this. Again, these are very Yesodi type things. You know, the chapter before we learned about how to derive laws from Pesukim and from Svara. Now he says, Le'olam kashitira b'Talmud shnei t'nayim or morayim chokin ze'em ze b'davama. Whenever you see in the Gemara t'nayim or morayim arguing, sibas machlokis hu shnei devorim. The reason why they're arguing is always because of 2 principles. One is called svara, v'hasheni creed o nafkus. I'm sorry, siva. Sorry, yeah. No. It says siva. I'm glad you're awake.
One
is called siva. Oh, it's okay. It's better than me 5:30 in the morning. Okay, the echad nikra siba. One is called the cause, and the second is called the result, the pri or the nafkusa or tachlis. The result, the siba or the. So let them explain it. You always have to look for the. What are they arguing about? Are they arguing about the cause of a law, or they're arguing about some sort of nafkamina in din? Wrote Slama, Tzarech ataladas, mahi siba hamani lekol echad mehem lichlok zemzeh. You have to know what's the cause that's stirring them up to fight with each other. Uladas, mahi svaraso shel kol echad mehem. And you have to know, you have to spell out the svara on each side. The Derech Mashal, he brings, again, Baba Kama, Baruch Hashem, Rab, my time below Amar Kishmuel, or Shmuel, my time below Amar Karab. So I brought in a little bit of that. We'll do a little bit to see. This is classic Gemara all the time. And we'll do a little bit of Gemara, Baruch Hashem. It says like this. There's Abba Navas and Zik in the Shor Bor Mav and the Hever. The question is, what is this strange world called Mava? Okay, the shore we know more or less is an ox. The boar is a pit. The hever we know has to be fire because of the Hemshech of the Mishnah. So that we know. But this third term, Mava, Mava is not known. My Mava, says the Gemara. Mava Machlokas. Rav Omar Mava Ze Odom. Rav says Mava is Adam Amazik. Shmuel Omer, Mava Zu Hashem. He says Mava is shame. So he says always you have to look at what is the cause of the machlokas. That's what the Gemara does. Rav over Mava zu Adam the Kasi in Yeshaya Omer Shoma Ata Boker B'Gam Laila Im Tevoin Bo'u. You'll have to ask. The man is asking there, okay? So that's Adam Amazik. And Shmuel Omer Mava Zeshen, because he has a pasuk in Avadia that says, Eich nichbasu Esav nivu b'tzifanav. How was Esav sought out when he was nivu b'tzifanav? The hidden things were nivu. My mashma, how do you see the shame there? So we look at the Targum, it says, Kid the Metargum Rav Yosef. Yosef gave a Targum and he said, Ich din it blish Esav is gal'in mat marohi. How was Esav found out and how was his hidden things revealed? So Rashi explains over there that the teeth are hidden and revealed. Okay, so it's a pretty far out analogy, but they have these very unusual pasukim from the Tanakh that they're learning the word Mava means man and shame. So Rav my time lo amar Shmuel. So now he said so the argument here, remember he said there always are, there's always some siba for the argument. So he says the siba
so the siba here is how they, which pasuk they sort of like better. I don't know. I never understood that.
Exactly.
I never.
Right. Is the pasukim.
I understand that, but they're each bringing down a pasuk. Each one is translating the pasuk correctly. It's just that he decided I'm going to take this pasuk to mean Mav, and also he decided I'll take that pasuk. But
okay, they're going to fight with each other in 1 second. But I'm going to jump down to what he says in the text, okay, so we can understand a little better what's going on. Okay, then we're going to go back to the text. This is back in the Darking Gemara. The Darking Gemara says like this. When you're looking for the Siba, remember that it goes with the Sibur of the Nafkusa. It really is the Sibur of the Din. On what basis are they arguing? Koloma. Mahi Siba Hamaniya Lehem Lichlok. What's the reason why they're fighting? So you have to know the Siba, why they pick their sides, and the Svara, why they disagree with each other. And here he spells it out. The Siba Lifamim Yeh Svara, O Pasik, O Din. Rotzelamar, Sibis Machosam. He says, the reason why people argue either is because of a Svara, or how they understand a Pasuk, or a Din. What does it mean, a Din? Rotzelamar Svar Machosam, who O Mitzad Svara, Sheyesh L'Kol Echad Mehem Lichlok. They're either arguing what's called more reasonable. One holds that this is more logical than his friend. His friend holds more logical than the other one. Omitzadin. Sheyesh mitzad shehem chokim b'makom acher nidon mahem chokim gam bezeh. Because they have some machlokus and a din somewhere else, it now impacts on what they're saying over here. But also din chitzoni siba shiachloku b'zeh. Since they hold a din somewhere else, it's now impacting on what they're holding here. So let's notice again. He says when people argue, you always have to get down to what the argument is. Okay? So it's either a svara, which means is this more reasonable to say or that, or they're saying this is the meaning of a pasuk, or because they have an argument somewhere else about some other din, it's impacting on what they hold here. Okay? So
just the question is language. He said he wants to know what
ahead.
the siba haminiya is. Doesn't the word miniya means to hold back or to prevent?
Oh, that's very good. Mania can be to prevent, but it could also mean to stir up.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Lahaniya means to stir up.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay? Or you think of monea means to prevent. But lahaniya means to stir up.
I looked up just now in Google Translate. Mania says prevention, just the way it's spelled here. So
exactly. But this is lahaniya. Okay, I'm not very good in dictum, but
neither am I.
It's a different verb. I checked this out. Okay, and I see it throughout the book. I see he's using this word. It doesn't mean to prevent. It means to stir up. Okay. So you have to say this guy wrote a book, what's bothering Rashi, okay? But really, you have to always get, why are they arguing? So let's just go through this Gemara a little bit, okay, to see. The first thing is a pasuk they're bringing. They're arguing in what's the peshat in the pasuk, right? Okay, what do? They not only bring their pasuk, but they also say why they don't hold like each other. You see, Rav Time Elo Amar Shmuel, Omlecha mikatani nivu. Ushmuel my time lo makarav. Omlecha mikatanu bo. So they have grammatical points against each other in the Pesukim, okay? So, but the basis of their reasoning to say that Mava is either Shein or Adam comes from these Pesukim, and that's their kiyum. But the reason why they disagree with each other because they hold that the grammatical forms do not line up. Okay? Of course, I'm not getting into all the deep details, but I'm just saying broadly. So now look what the Gemara says. Nichte kroi lo kamar daike lo kamar daike. Since they both are showing us that the diktuk is not
correct. It doesn't work, right?
On both sides, right? So now, Rav, my time alone, Makar Shmuel. So we can't say that the deciding point of whether it's Adam or whether it's Shein comes from these Pesukim because they're not Mukrach. Okay, you don't have enough evidence on one side to say he could say what he said unequivocally. So now it's a svara. Listen to this. Tana Shur. Rab, my time local Shmuel, because it says sure. Sure means call me later, sure. It doesn't say regel. He says a categorical word was used. If it meant, excuse me, if it meant a specific type of shore, see, meaning what's left, it can only be regel and Shein, right? If Mava is Shein, if Mava is Shein, then shore can only be Karen or regel. Is that correct?
Again, if Mava is Shein,
then
shore can only be Karen or regel. I guess so.
Right? There's only two left.
Right.
There's only Karen,
Right.
Shein, and regel. That happens
Right.
to be the reality. So,
Right.
so Shmuel says, excuse me? Yeah, Rav holds that Mava is Adam, correct? Rav holds that
Right, right to the top of the page. Rav and Mava is Adam. You have it right there on top.
Exactly. So if Rav holds Mava is Adam, right? So he says the word shore was used as a collective group. But according to you, Shmuel, it shouldn't have said shore. It should have said either Shein or it should have said Karen. So in Svara, I have a logical proof against you. According to you, if you're already saying that Mava is one of the particulars, so then why is shore used? Shore is a categorical. Shore is a category. It's a unit word. It's not a particular. It's not the word Shane. According to you, it should have said either Shane or Karen.
Right.
What is it saying the word shore for? So that's why I say that shore is a categorical, including all the parts of shore, Karen, Shane, and Regel. If it's a categorical unit of Karen, Shane, and Regel, what does Mava have to be? It has to be other. It can't be, as we noted already, that the Aish and the Or are taken.
Right.
So there's only one thing it could be, is other. That's what he says. So they have a logical, the point here is the svara of what shore means. I mean, what Mava has to mean is a svara. Since, according to you, if Mava is Shane, then the word shore shouldn't have been used. It should have been used, the word Karen should have been used. Talk about the real thing. Why using the collective verb? Or the collective noun, I'm sorry. Okay? So, that's why Rav said that Mava is Adam because the collective noun shore was used, and shore should include everything, Karen, Shan, Regel. So Rav, my time law, Shmuel, Kana shore, but call me later shore. It's a collective noun. So now Shmuel, what is he going to say about that? Shmuel Nami, Haitana Yule Shore. It uses the collective noun, Shmuel. So how can you say it's either Karen or, so you know what he says? Omer of Yehuda, Tana Shor Lakarno Mav L'Sheno. You're right. You have a point. But the shore that we're talking about is Karen.
Right.
And of course Mav is Shane. But that's a little dochik. I mean that's a point for Rav really, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we get into a whole pilpul in the Gemara of how could you say that shore is Karen. Okay. And they go to the Lohares and they have to go back and forth, okay? And finally they drop it. And they say, El Omer Rabbo, no. Really,
Shore is Regel.
Shore is Regel. Okay, after they go through a whole process. Okay, but still, now that's even weaker, really, you know, in what aspect? Because at least the pasuk says Kidat Shor Shorehu, so shore at least is associated with the word
Karen, right?
Negifa, you know what I mean? When it comes to Shem Regel, it says V'shilach has bi'ara. The names of the word shore. V'shilach has bi'ara l'ste'acher. So by going through this pilpul, it wasn't just an idle pilpul here. It really shows the strength of Rav's position here, because Shmuel is forced to say that it's Regel, okay, which is Dachuk. Okay, but that's not, he holds it. That's but you see the beauty of the Gemara is that it shows you the strengths and weaknesses of each side. Okay, that's the beauty of everything is up front. It's thoughtful and it's deep and but it's very, very open. I mean, it's very, very clear about what it's saying. Okay, you have to get into it a little bit. It's clear.
All right, but you have to really to relate this back to what he said about the Siba. So really, the Siba here is really the Psukim. Question is whether or not it really works out because of the questions back and forth. But
so let's talk about it now, okay? The Pesukim the first thing they did was bring the Pesukim and they knocked them off. They said nobody really is very good with
so right.
As far as the Gilui Milsa, right? So now we're handling in Svar when the Mishnah, the Baalei Mishnah wrote the word shor.
Sure. Right. What does it mean?
When he read the word shor, what was the mashma'ut of it?
Right. So what is the Siba? So the machlekes is really in the understanding of the word. Then the Siba of the machlekes is the understanding of the word shar.
Yeah.
Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, but a question. But I was thinking. I'm with you. I mean, I'm working this out. It's not. It's like Torah having my phone.
Right.
Maybe it's a question. it's really they're arguing in Svara. What's more Mistavra at the Baalei Mishnah when he said the word sure? What does it mean? I mean, like over here, there's the word sure. Is it? It's it's more. In other words, they're not arguing in Pesukim or they're not arguing Tanakh here, right? They're trying to say why is it more reasonable that the word sure means either Karen Regel or Karen Sheinin Regel. They're trying to explain why it's more reasonable to say it.
Right.
Here's the confusion. Are they arguing is this like a pasuk, the Mishnah, or is this an example more of what's more? They're trying to bring reasonable arguments to show what it must mean. So I think, but I understand this is more. They're not arguing what a pasuk means, or maybe you want to say that what sure means. But they're arguing what's more reasonable to say it.
Yeah, that would make sense, right?
That's what I understand. Okay,
right.
Just say that. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll continue this. We'll stop here. We'll continue. There's a lot to learn, and Baruch Hashem, slowly. But it's all one point. The point is clarity. That's all. To understand that there has to be logical clarity in things, and if we understand how things really work, then we'll be clear about why these positions are taken, and it takes the mysticism out of the learning. I mean, really the fuzziness and everything's a gzeres hakasa. Not everything's not gzeres hakasa. The people are working logically to figure things out. Okay, to say that we'll stop here.
And next month's Shabbos I have a Shulma of Malka, which I have to be at.
Okay.
And we're not going to be done by 10:30. We're usually never done that early.
The Seder. So there is any changes in the email, okay? And if not, so we'll miss a week, okay?
Okay.
But it's important we go through the material and at least it's recorded and people, if they ever want to look at it, they'll look at it. But this book is, I hope. Everything is adding to our knowledge, And when we actually go through a piece, I'd love to go through a piece of Eden with you and actually, use these things, drag ourselves into actually applying all these things and talking about it at that level. That'd be wonderful.
Right.
Okay, that's what Hashem will do it. Okay, have a great
very
week.
good. You too. Okay.
And remember, this is the beginning of Simcha. Some people are machmir from Rosh Chodesh Aleph. Some people maybe think this is really lamed, you have to start tomorrow. But whatever it is, I'm asking people, how do you marvel the simcha? You have to be happy. It's a very great time for the Jewish people, and they have to do what it says, because in the time of happiness, you have to be happiness.
Well, it's a more fundamental question. What is happiness? Because we're all corrupted with today's view of what happiness is. And we really don't know what happiness is. So that's it.
Really, the greatest simcha is learning Torah. When you get the clarity of Torah and you see the depth of it, that's the greatest simcha. But there's simcha, mitzvah. Rebbeinu Bechaya says every mitzvah has a mitzvah of simcha. He says,
Right.
Yeah. So he said every mitzvah has with it, and even I went, unfortunately, to a very good friend of mine at the Shiva, and I didn't say it, but if you look at the bracha there, it says of bracha dynamics, it says Kashem sheborchen al ha'tov meborchen al ha'ra. So my kasha was okay to accept the ra is one thing, okay, punishment, onish, everything you want to say, but avarach. So that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. That's his kasha there. He doesn't say it like that. That's obviously his kasha. And he says, an unbelievable chiddush. He says, if you're Eved Hashem, everything you do, all your avodas Hashem is with simcha. It's another avodah. It's another avodah. So you have to be with simcha too. Okay, it has sadness in it, but every mitzvah has simcha in it. And now we really, Baruch Hashem, we should, this is the zman, this mesugal for it.
Right.
Okay, so have a lot of simcha, and we should learn a lot and have a lot of joy in learning, and I hope you enjoy the sefer.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Someone said to me, how did you marvel the simcha? I said, Baruch Hashem, we had a sefer that came out. That was the greatest simcha we can have. Okay, have a good week.
Okay, have a good one. Okay, good. Okay.